So, I think stories are important. It's very easy to talk about homelessness as this sort of blanket issue, right? And to depersonalize the topic of homelessness. But the truth of the matter is, when we say homeless, we mean human beings, men, women, children in our communities who do not have a safe place to lay their head tonight. And I wonder if either of you would like to start with that. Do you have any sort of personal stories from an organizational point of view that you would like to share with us about homelessness today? And Jesse, you can start.
Sure. I think that for me, homelessness and housing and gentrification, like all these issues and displacement all have like a lot of intertwines. My family being from New York, we've been kind of like pushed around a good amount over the last 20 years in terms of where we can afford to live and where we can't. And I have a couple cousins actually, who have been homeless for a while, on and off chronically. It's difficult to kind of reconcile with and manage and support, especially when a lot of times some of the social services that are there aren't as robust as you would like. From an organizing standpoint, I've done a lot of organizing work with groups like Food Not Bombs, and doing kind of food sharings with homeless folks and understanding like the multiple complexities of it, where actually earlier today, Adonis and I were kind of talking a bit about the questions, and some of the things that came up was just like the multiple aspects of homelessness that get kind of compounded, where you talk about, if you have some mental health challenges and you're homeless, that's going to be exacerbated even worse. If you have physical ailments and you're homeless, that's going to be exacerbated even worse. There's so many things that just continue to get compounded with the lack of a stable house or a stable place, structure to be in, to live in. There's certain social services you won't have access to if you don't have a residence. So there's just so many things that I never knew. And it took me either having family members who experienced it, or through organizing experience to finally like grasp, like, wow, this is, once you get in this hole, it is very hard to get out sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's really important to identify, right? That it's so complicated. And I remember growing up in Los Angeles and thinking that homelessness was about addiction, right? So people who are addicts are homeless, people that are homeless are addicts. And that was basically it. And it wasn't until I was older and really started to understand our communities and understand the complexities of everything from mental health to poverty, and just understanding how one simple skip of a paycheck could lead to someone not being able to pay for housing. And it really does become complicated. So thanks for sharing, and also sharing your personal family connection. I think if we all are honest, we probably all at some point have known someone who didn't have a place to live. So thank you. I think it's very important to draw that human connection. How about you, Audrey? Are there any sort of stories or connections that you'd like to share?
So, I mean, just to kind of give us more context for the whole group here, in our community alone, Miami-Dade County, there are 250,000 households that are cost burdened. This means that they are paying more than 30% of their income, of their rent, for housing, right? And that shouldn't be, that means that they do not have access to affordable housing, right? So that means that many of these households are just one paycheck away from experiencing homelessness. These are our families, these are our young people, these are just all of our residents, right? In Miami-Dade County Public Schools, 9,000 students across the K-12 system were experiencing housing instability. Many of us here in Miami-Dade County, and especially in Overtown, we know that sometimes there's multiple families living under one roof, right? So that's just one argument from someone or several people experiencing homelessness. And there's a lot of housing instability, right? So that's kind of the context I wanted to share with everyone here, that this is what's happening in our community. And COVID has only compounded this issue, right? This has caused, many people have lost their jobs, lost their income, all these different things. So they're at risk of losing their homes, right? And I know we have a question later talking about COVID specifically, but I also wanted to share that in my experience in working with our young people with lived experience of housing struggles, each and every one of them, their first experience of homelessness was, or housing instability rather, was with their family at a young age, being evicted from their home. Throughout Miami-Dade County, a landlord can say, if you do not have a lease, a landlord can say, hey, you got to get out of here within 15 days. You can't stay here anymore, right? 15 days is not enough, people. 15 days is not enough to be able to get into another unit, save up or whatever, or even just like, get everything together. That's really traumatic. And that first episode of eviction can just lead to this cycle of housing struggles, right? So many young people that I worked with, and I myself, right in college, I was kicked out, right? So I know firsthand what it's like to not have somewhere, you have to think about, oh my God, like, where do I have to go tonight? Where can I go? And luckily enough, I had friends and family that would take me in, but that's not the same story that many others may have, right? So, and a lot of times shelters may not be the most friendliest place, right? Or even other housing agencies, right? It's scary, right? So we know that with homelessness, many of our youth, they've shared that they've, from their experiences, it was tough, right? And when you're thinking about where am I going to sleep, what am I going to eat tonight, you're not thinking about your well-being, you're not thinking about going back to school, and you're not thinking about, what am I going to do now? I certainly wasn't. Thankfully, I had that support network that was able to support me and connect with me. But many times, many of residents that are unhoused to this day, this is what has happened. That lack of affordable housing and that lack of support from a community or whatever, it causes this episode of homelessness that reaches, across, different factors. And, we know that LGBT youth in particular are highly impacted, because they're overrepresented at this time from experiencing homelessness. I know that we want to talk about youth, right? Right now, we were only able to count 300 young people that were experiencing homelessness throughout Miami-Dade County. We know that's an undercount. So we want to make sure that we're counting as many youth as possible. So that way we can hold all of our different partners together and say, hey, this is the number of youth that we need to work with. Let's get to work, right? So that's just from my experience, what does homelessness look like and what it means and some of the things that it can do to folks, right? And I hope that everyone here on the call can think about that, like what you said, Daniel and Jesse, like, each and every one of us, we may have known someone that has experienced homelessness or housing and struggles, right? We've known someone that has couch surfed in college, or, that uncle that had to sleep on our couch for a while, right? Each and every one of us has that sort of connection. So it's just a matter of realizing, oh my gosh, this is what homelessness means, and this is the system that creates it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much.